This episode is sponsored by Realtor.com, who wants you to take advantage of your free profile on Realtor.com. By claiming and completing your free profile, adding a photo, and all of the information that puts you head and shoulders above the competition, you're on your way to receiving free leads, helping search engines find you, and staying top of mind with past clients. To learn more about claiming your free profile, go to Realtor.com/profile.
Welcome to the Real View podcast, where Ohio Realtors connect you to innovators and influencers, keeping you with the real view of real estate. Whether you're a broker, agent, first-time homebuyer, industry leader, or just happen to stumble upon our podcast today, you can expect to hear tips, tools, tricks, interesting information, and so much more from the experts in Ohio's real estate game. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Real View podcast. I am your host, Allison Wiley. Joining me today is our special guest. His name is Chris Birk. He is the Director of Education for Veterans United Home Loans, the nation's #1 VA lender for homebuyers. A national expert on the VA loan program, Chris is also author of the book on VA loans, an essential guide to maximizing your home loan benefits. His analysis and articles have appeared at a host of sites and publications, including the Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, ABC News, USA Today, the Houston Chronicle, and more. He also has more than 250,000 people that follow him on the VA Loans Insider, his interactive VA loan community on Facebook. Chris, welcome to the show.
Allison, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, we're really excited to be talking to you today, Chris, because we've never talked about VA loans, veteran home ownership. We've never talked about this on the show before, and I've been personally wanting to do an episode on this for a really long time. So I'm so glad to have you on and glad to be talking about this. And what an interesting and very important topic that we're going to dive into. But before we get started on that, I want to hear a little bit more about you, your career journey. Tell us how you got to where you are today.
Oh, wow. Well, I was born in a small... I won't take you back that far. No, I was a newspaper reporter in a former life. And then I taught college students. I tried to teach college students, is probably more accurate, how to write and become better writers. And then I eventually found my way to, at the time, a really small upstart mortgage lender that was focused on helping veterans and military families utilize their hard-earned benefit. And that was almost 15 years ago. And at the time, it was a small company trying to do their best. And now we're a bigger company still trying to do our best. It's been a pretty remarkable run over the last 14 years or so, and an amazing thing to be a part of, watching a company of just passionate and committed people who are here with a singular focus, and that's to help change lives and improve the lives of those who served our country. And that teeny tiny small .com company that I started with is the largest VA lender in the country and has made more purchase loans to VA buyers. More veterans have chose us, put their trust in us really to help utilize this benefit to buy a home than anybody else since 2016. And so I feel incredibly lucky and grateful to be with you and to get to do the things that I do to help just make sure that veterans know what they've earned and what it can do for them. And so thank you for having this conversation, because anytime we can talk about VA loans and about veteran home buying is a day that some veteran or some family member who knows a veteran or some community member who knows a veteran, is a day that we get to hopefully make a difference for someone who served.
I love that. And I think, that's a great way to look at this episode, and something really special too. It's not every day that we hope to get to have a major impact on somebody, especially such a worthy community of individuals. And I hope, our realtors can take this too and learn something and learn how to, work with these types of loans, work with, our veterans in order to make the homeownership dream possible. So I'm really excited about it. Really excited just to dive in and get to know a little bit more, because I personally don't know too much about it. So this is going to be an educational opportunity for me as well. But I think we should start, just at the beginning. What are VA loans? How do they work? And what are some of the benefits kind of associated with them? Let's just kind of get some, basic knowledge about it before we move forward.
Yeah. So, the education benefits typically get top billing rather when people think about the GI Bill, but the VA loan program has been a part of our nation's fabric for almost 80 years. It was part of the original GI Bill that was signed into law in 1944. And so for generations, it's been helping veterans and their families achieve the dream of homeownership. It is a government-backed mortgage, much like FHA and USDA loans, but it has some remarkable benefits. They're benefits that exist because they were intended to help level the playing field for those who served our country. Part of the genesis of the benefit was recognizing what GIs in the Pacific and in Europe were sacrificing for us. And so to honor that sacrifice and to help ease that post-war transition, we as a country said, we're going to make home buying easier. We're not going to require a down payment. We're going to have flexible, more holistic approach to credit and underwriting. We're going to make it possible to have great rates. And those hallmarks that started in June of 1944 are still a part of this benefit today. And it's still making a huge difference for veterans and military members and their families. VA loans historically, though, had sort of been in the background of the mortgage market, up until the Great Recession, 2007, 2008. They had accounted for about 2% of the mortgage market. Today, they are about 12% of the mortgage market. So there has been incredible growth in VA lending since the Great Recession. And there are a few reasons why, but the bottom line is that it has made homeownership possible for more than 25 million veterans in the last nearly 8 decades. And it's still doing that today. It makes so many buyers, and this is true in the current environment that we're in. It was true in the 2 biggest years in the history of mortgage lending that we just got out of. There's so many civilian buyers, especially younger buyers, down payment, credit, and student loan debt are these 3 barriers to entry. And for so many veterans, military members, those barriers don't exist. Like, they can buy without a down payment. They don't have to have top tier credit. And so many of those serving don't have student loan debt. And so it has made a huge difference in helping younger people break into the housing market sooner and start building that generational wealth. And for those who have bought 10 homes or 15 homes, which is certainly a part of the story for many veterans and military families, it still offers some really incredible benefits that help ensure at the end of the day, veterans are making the best financial decision possible. And the key there is really just knowing what you have access to, knowing that this is an option. And that's what allows you to weigh all of your options and make the best decision for you and your family.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great. Thank you for that background and kind of history on it. I think always getting a background story and learning a little bit about, the origin of where something came from, I think is helpful as we move our discussion along. What types of challenges, you kind of mentioned how this was started and kind of where it was birthed from, but What are some of the challenges that faces our veterans and their families when it comes to home ownership? And you mentioned some of the things, that younger people face with student loans and things like that. But specifically when it comes to veterans, what challenges are you seeing the veterans and their families being faced with? And how does this loan really kind of help with those challenges?
It's interesting too, because we just finished a survey. We do sort of regular surveys of veterans and civilians across the country. And it's so interesting to see that so many veterans and service members are actually, when we look at attitudes and optimism and how prepared they feel when it comes to home buying, they actually feel better off and more optimistic when it comes to civilians. At the same time, they're still facing a lot of the same challenges at a market level that everybody else is in terms of rising home prices and high interest rates. We saw some of the challenges that can arise, and this was really pronounced in 2020 and 2021 when home prices were skyrocketing and multiple offer scenarios and people offering tens of thousands, if not more, above asking. So many of the struggles that we saw among veterans and service members looking to use their VA loan benefit was simply that they were looking to use their VA loan benefit. There is a litany of misconceptions and misunderstandings about how VA loans work and what they require of home sellers and what sort of buyers exist out there who utilize this benefit. And so we saw, even during two of the biggest years in the history of the VA loan program, we still saw so many veterans who weren't buying the first or the fifth house on their list. They were buying the 10th or the 12th because home sellers wouldn't even let them make an offer using their benefit. And so those misconceptions are still out there. And we and the VA itself and other partners work hard to help eradicate those misconceptions and to educate home sellers and real estate agents about how the benefit works and what it can do. But that's really been a singular challenge for VA and also some FHA borrowers as well. So on the civilian side, some of the hurdles will get better as we continue to have conversations like this, though. And that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. I didn't even think about that, especially because we all know how competitive the market still is. I mean, we still, we hear the market slowing down, but yet, so many of our members have been saying, no, I still have, listings that we're still getting 5, multiple offers on them. And I still have clients who are preparing, to go through a multiple offer, process and what that strategy looks like. And you're right, that's really interesting to see, that's kind of been a hurdle and something that you have to really work on when it comes to these VA loans. And you talked a little bit about the misconceptions and what exists around that when it comes to VA loans. Are there any other big misconceptions out there that, we should take the time to really debunk?
Some of the most common, at least and you can almost sort of bifurcate and talk about misconceptions among veterans and then I think also misconceptions among real estate agents. And so the most common, I think, for veterans is that this is a one-time benefit. I mean, the reality is this is a benefit that you've earned for life, and you can use it over and over again. It's even possible to have more than one VA loan at the same time. There's one that I think straddles both worlds, especially when we think about willingness to entertain offers. And there's sort of this overarching sense among some folks that this isn't a solid loan product and these aren't solid buyers. And the reality is that if you look at pre-approval success, just the sheer number of offers being made and folks who make it to closing, data have shown that a pre-approved VA buyer is about the safest bet on the market. VA buyers and veterans as a whole are typically better capitalized and have higher average incomes than civilians, despite the fact that about 3/4 of VA buyers purchase without a down payment. This has been the safest loan on the market from a foreclosure perspective for most of the last 15 years. And so the reality is and it's hard for me to be objective to be sure, but this is arguably the most powerful and safest mortgage option on the market. Veterans have done so much for us. And so an unwillingness to accept those offers, it just flies in the face of not just their service, but the facts on the ground. And so that's one where we've just tried to do as much as we can to help educate everyone involved about how powerful this product is and what it can do, and also what it asks. And this is more one for, the seller and the real estate agent side, but I think there's also a misconception that if you're transacting with a VA buyer, you're going to pay all of their closing costs. And the reality is a home seller doesn't have to pay a dime on behalf of the VA buyer. It's always a product of negotiation between buyer and seller. Now, sellers can absolutely pay for closing costs and up to 4% in concessions, but market specifics are going to dictate that, the rate environment and just the overall environment that we're in. But there isn't this sort of zero sum where if you're working with a VA buyer, that means your seller is going to get stuck paying a ton of closing costs.
Yeah, these are all really great, issues that arrive and misconceptions that come up that I think are important to, recognize and realize that may not necessarily be the case. You kind of mentioned too, the type of ways you can use VA loans. Would you share a little bit more, about all the different ways that VA loans can be utilized?
Yeah, it really runs the gamut. They're typically utilized to purchase, single family primary residences, just like any other government-backed loan. You're using this to buy a home that you intend to live in full time, but that home can look like a traditional stick-built home. It could be new construction. It could be a condo, manufactured housing. In addition, VA has two distinct refinance loans that are really geared toward helping veterans either lower their monthly payment or tap into the equity that they've earned. This is a benefit that the government backs. It essentially provides a form of insurance for lenders, but it's not a loan that's made by the VA. And so, when veterans are wanting to learn more about this benefit or thinking about buying a home, what they're going to end up doing is working with a non-bank or a bank or a local lender. Some financial institution is actually going to make that loan and the government's going to back it. What that also means is that rates, terms, and costs and fees, all of those things can and will change depending on who you're working with. The government doesn't set the rate for this product. It doesn't set closing costs. It does limit what lenders can charge in closing costs, which is another benefit of VA loans. But when it comes to thinking about utilizing the benefit, it really pays to shop around, to talk with multiple lenders. And, there's studies and surveys every year that continue to show that a huge chunk of home buyers every year, civilian and veteran, don't do that. They don't get multiple loan estimates. They don't get pre-approved from multiple lenders. And so just know going in, you've earned this benefit, but what it looks like in practice and in cost, it can vary.
Yeah, definitely a smart decision in dealing with VA loans, any type of, mortgage loans that you're looking at. Absolutely shop around, take a look at, multiple different companies and options and really explore to see, what makes sense and what's the best fit for you. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, so I just want to add too, everybody's situation is different. At the end of the day, just sort of looking at like large aggregate figures, VA loans also tend to have the lowest average rates on the market. They have some of the lowest closing and origination costs and fees. And so it's not to say that if you're a veteran, you should automatically get a VA loan. The goal is ultimately getting veterans into homes. And part of that is just making sure that veterans know about the benefit, know what they've earned, and that gives them the tool to be able to say, I've got all of these options in front of me. Now I can really compare costs and rates and fees and make the best financial decision for myself and my family.
Yeah, absolutely. Always good to have options. This episode of The Real View is brought to you by the Ohio Association of Community Colleges. Ohio's network of community colleges provides accessible training that accommodates the busy lifestyles of aspiring real estate professionals at half the price of a traditional university. With convenient locations in every part of the state, as well as online options, Ohio's community colleges are your smart choice for pre-licensing education. For more details or to start the journey to a real estate career, visit the education page at ohiorealtors.org and then click on the pre-license course locations. Are veterans kind of the main group of people you see using these VA loans? Is there any other groups of people that can use this? Can the families use it, or is it mostly those veterans that are taking advantage of this?
So unlike some other VA benefits, it does not extend to dependents or children. So if you're a military brat like my wife, you can't use the VA loan benefit. It is mostly veterans and service members. National Guard and Reserve members are also eligible for this benefit. There are some select groups who don't serve in the military that are eligible, but those are pretty small. The benefit does extend in one unique and special case, and that's to surviving spouses. So if you're a spouse whose partner died in the line of duty or of a service-connected disability, then you may be eligible for this benefit, and you can use it as if you served yourself.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good to know. Good to point out. Is there education that happens on this, like to our veterans? I hear you say, so much that, they need to be aware that this exists and this is an option for them. What does that look like? And how can we, as realtors and as, someone who our clients look to be an expert on this, how can we help educate on this? And what does that education process look like for these veterans? I mean, are they getting information from the service, or what does that process look like?
Yeah, no, they are. They absolutely are. When service members are transitioning back into civilian life, they're absolutely hearing about and learning about this benefit. There's also a lot of learning opportunities while they're serving to hear about it. But it's also understandable that while you're doing everything you do, your day-to-day job to help safeguard our freedoms, like some of those things might get lost amid all the other things that you're doing. And so that transition period has a ton of great information. And so that helps from a ready to hit the ground running perspective. What we've seen over time is awareness has continued to grow. Were studies and surveys back in the 2010s that indicated that there was still a ways to go in terms of veterans knowing about this benefit. We've done some surveys recently that indicated that most veterans know about this benefit, and a lot of where the room to grow was they know about it, but they don't really know what it can do for them. We found that for about 75% of veterans, it's not a top of mind benefit. So if you ask a veteran in your life or a veteran in your church community, a veteran sitting next to you, what benefits have you earned through your service? For most veterans, this one doesn't come to mind. And so part of it is just making sure that we find ways to keep it top of mind as people start to think about making home-based decisions. And so the VA does a tremendous job of getting the word out locally and nationally. Realtors have done a great job, I think, of starting to, at an increasing clip, ask the question of their clients, did you serve in the military? I don't know what it might mean for you, but if I know that you served, I can at least kind of help you think about this other tool that you might have at your disposal that you didn't know that you had. And so that's something that it's been really amazing to see real estate agents leaning towards certifications that help focus on military families and relocation, starting to ask that question more just to help better equip their buyers, especially in tough markets.
Yeah, I see this as like a really huge opportunity, that our realtors can take advantage of, is working with these type of clients. We know this funding's available. We know, that that's something that can be taken into consideration as we work with, veterans. And I think this is a really great option to have. It's just kind of another tool in the toolbox for our realtors, when we think about how we can best serve our clients. I hear you, explain all these benefits, and there certainly is so much, to take advantage of when it comes to these VA loans. Are there any, disadvantages, any challenges? I know you mentioned that sometimes, they're not seen as strong buyers. There's that misconception out there. Are there any other disadvantages when it comes to this? Any other challenges or things that we should be aware of?
I think the biggest one that comes to mind, the VA funding fee. So there is a required fee that's applied to every VA loan. Now, if you receive compensation for a service-connected disability, you don't have to pay it, but everybody else does. And this is a fee that goes directly to the VA loan program and helps it keep going for future generations of military buyers. While VA loans have been incredibly foreclosure resistant, the reality is some veterans do default on their loans. And when that happens, the money from this fee helps to pay those losses and keep the program going. And so it's not a fee if you're using a conventional mortgage, for example, that you would have to pay. The flip side to that, though, with the conventional loan is unless you're putting down 20%, you'd have to pay private mortgage insurance. So there are pluses and minuses to both. The other, and I don't think it's a detriment, but it is something, especially when we're talking about myths and misconceptions, but can also present hurdles for some buyers, is the VA appraisal process. And it's certainly something that real estate agents know a lot about and often have strong feelings about. And appraisals for government-backed loans, specifically for VA loans, look a little bit different than conventional loans. And the big reason why is that they take a 100-foot view, let's say, of a property and really aim to help ensure that veterans are buying homes that are safe, sound, and sanitary. And to do that, the VA appraisal process considers what's known as minimum property requirements. And so the VA has these baseline ideas of what helps make that home safe and marketable for a veteran. That doesn't mean that a veteran can't buy a fixer-upper, which is another common misconception. You absolutely can. It might just look a little bit different and take a little bit more than it might on a conventional loan. It's also not something that you can waive. And this was another huge thing that veterans across the country, and certainly in Ohio, were dealing with in 2020 and 2021, when home prices are skyrocketing, inventory is tight, multiple offers, and people are throwing all contingencies out the window. And that's not something that you can do with a VA loan. There has to be that appraisal to verify the valuation and to take a look at those high-level property conditions.
Which is really, just in the best interest of the veteran. They're not thinking of this as a disadvantage when we think of a competitive market and, what we all had been through with waiving some of, the inspections and things like that, that it's really just coming from a place where the government wants to make sure you're in a safe and secure housing for you and your family. So I think that's good to know. Chris, so where can our veterans start with learning more and getting more information? And where can our realtors start if they want to, educate themselves a little bit more on this topic? How do we get started for both the veteran and our realtors?
Well, you can certainly visit veteransunited.com. I would be happy to send, I don't know that anyone's ever read my 300-page book on VA loans. I certainly wouldn't blame them, but we love to send people copies of that for free. And you can go to valoanbook.com and get that. The VA loan program itself, if you just search the VA loan guarantee program, their website has a ton of great information. And if you ever, real estate agent, veteran, civilian, and if you have questions, I'm always happy to help. And that's one of the best parts of my job, is answering questions from some veterans and military families. My email is chris, CHRIS, @vu.com. And please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, I think this is just, as I mentioned before, a really great opportunity, especially, here in Ohio. We have a big, military presence here in Dayton. And I think it's something our realtors should definitely educate themselves on and be aware of, at least, to some extent. You don't have to know every single answer. That's what people like Chris are here for. But at least, know enough to be able to assist those clients if, you happen to be in a position where you can serve one of them. I think it's really great and really important. Any last bits of knowledge or really important things, Chris, that our realtors and veterans need to know when it comes to VA loans?
Well, I think just for realtors, I mean, they are the boots on the ground for so many veterans and military families. And we have worked with countless realtors who are so passionate about serving veterans and military families. And helping veterans get into homes is a collaborative enterprise. And like, we're just so thankful for the amazing real estate agents that we work with who maybe they don't specialize in VA loans, but they specialize in compassionately caring about getting people into homes. And so just know that the work that you're doing every day to help veterans and military families in Ohio achieve this dream, it really does change lives.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. On behalf, of our membership, I know they do amazing work and are proud to help, our veterans achieve the American dream. They're doing it for us, helping us achieve the American dream. So I think it's only right that, we take care of them on our end as well. And Chris, thank you for all the work that you do too. And educating about this topic. You're right. It is such a benefit that's out there for our military that everyone should be aware of and know about, at least enough, as I mentioned, at least enough to get by. But yeah, thank you to you for all the work that you do on this such important topic as well.
No, thank you so much, Allison. And again, thank you for making time to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And to all of our listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will be back with you next week. Thanks, guys. Thank you for listening to The Real View. That wraps up today's episode. You can keep up with the latest on the podcast at ohiorealtors.org/therealview and on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Have questions, comments, or suggestions? We want to hear from you. Email us at podcast@ohiorealtors.org. We'll see you next time.